It's time for the main event. It's the Shoe Shine.
¿Qué onda, vatos locos, damas y caballeros? It's your boy Dave in the 702 coming back at you for that Monday boxing recap known as the Shoe Shine. Joining me all the way from the city of brotherly love, Philly Irish, Drew Evo. ¿Qué pasa, homie?
What's up, Dave?
Man, good to see you back on a Monday night. I know things are ramping up, that the end of summer is upon us, man, and football season is about to bestow upon us, and I know so many people are looking forward to that, but boxing took like a backseat this weekend. All we have to talk about for the moment is the current state of boxing. Floyd Mayweather returns to the ring in an exhibition match against a former Mafia's grandson in a rematch, Drew. I think more importantly, it was how surprised I was that 22,000 people showed up. 22,000 screaming Mexican fans showed up to watch Floyd Mayweather in an exhibition. And of course, the co-main was actually very, very solid. I want to talk about that kid Picasso and his future as a bright potential star in the super bantamweight division, the division that the monster Inoue controls. Shout out to Sonteo Media. Glad to have you. Wile E. Coyote, SP. A slow week indeed, Drew. By the way, the 49ers and the Raiders went to a draw. Did you see? I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about all these new rules in the see the new kickoff rules, man? It's fucking hot mess with that shit. But by that final play, the 49ers and the Raiders, Drew, if you haven't seen the final play of their last preseason game right here in Las Vegas at the Allegiant, it was funny as shit, man. I never seen so much foolishness in that final play of 49ers versus the Raiders. They end the preseason in a draw, and we're just 2 weeks away from the official start of football season. Drew, glad to have you, man. Did you actually see any of this Floyd Mayweather-Gotti exhibition match?
Yeah, I saw it. Just another joke and everything, man. Like replaces the referee midway for the fight and everything. Yeah, man. No wonder why DAZN told him you can't have this on pay-per-view.
Drew, I know you're a fan of WWE wrestling, as a lot of guys still are into that. It's very entertaining. But the first one that ended in a melee in the fourth round or whatnot, it kind of smelled like some shit was about to go down. Like you said, changing referees midway through. It kind of felt like at any moment the thing was beginning to feel scripted a little bit, right?
Yeah, it became a joke. I look at it like this. All his exhibitions are jokes, and none of them drew in pay-per-view buys either. That's why I think DAZN told him we're not having this one on pay-per-view. You're not doing numbers on pay-per-view, dude. We're just gonna give you some money and that's it. And tell you the truth, man. It's part of the reason why we decided to talk about the state of boxing today.
Yeah, and what's going on with Floyd flying to Mexico with what appear to be $1 million in cash? As far as I know, you can't travel with more than $10,000 across international waters. I know he flies in his own commercial or his own private airplane that says Floyd Mayweather. And Drew, honestly, if you've got any inklings of money problems, the last thing you need to be operating is a private plane. If you guys know what it costs to operate a private airplane, they say he owes money to the IRS still, and that he has money. He was in Dubai recently and held up in Dubai for what they reported was some kind of financial issue with the government. I don't know anything at that to be true. I know one thing for sure, that I live within a couple of miles of Floyd Mayweather. I know that much. But I'm nowhere near his gated community, even though I'm just 2 miles away from the guy. What were your thoughts on the matchup, man? Does Gotti have he's been an MMA professional fighter, probably on the smaller scale, club circuit of the East Coast. Does he have any future as a professional boxer?
No.
Yeah, flat out no. Yeah, even my wife was a little bit disappointed. We grew up watching those TV shows like the Gottis and whatnot.
Just like everybody who fought in an exhibition has no future in boxing.
Actually, recently, man, Pacquiao, I still haven't watched that fight he had against a Japanese kickboxer, and everybody's telling me he got his ass handed to him a little bit. Maybe they don't always pan out to be, but Floyd always does his homework, I suppose. There was another interesting exhibition match on that I'm like, why is this an exhibition match? But vicious Victor Ortiz, hardly looking vicious anymore. You guys remember he was Oscar De La Hoya's protege. He was kind of the Ryan Garcia of 15, 20 years ago. He had a bitter rivalry with his old best friend, Brandon Rios. And he even came across, I think, some sex charges. He was in a movie he was in maybe 2 movies. He did the Ronda Rousey route. He went Hollywood, Drew, and his career was never the same after hitting the Mayweather payday. Remember he headbutted Floyd, but he found himself back on a card now in his late 30s. And Drew, when they joked that they said that he was rocking a dad bod, and then he came into the ring, and I'm like, oh shit, this looked like me without my shirt off. Is Vicious Victor Ortiz kidding himself, man? Exhibitions thinking he's gonna come back. I mean, Robert the Ghost Guerrero all these guys tried into their late 40s, but they just don't seem to have it anymore.
If we can look at some things here, man, like some of them probably could have done it if they were more active during their career, but these guys weren't active enough in their careers, like late in their careers and everything. So. But I don't know. I'd rather not have to talk about that card again, because that whole card was a shit show.
Well, it's ironic, Drew, because I'm thinking about out loud what's coming up on the schedule. Obviously, September 14th, Mexican Independence Day. Canelo Alvarez returns to Las Vegas, as does the UFC and Turkey Al-Sheikh. And the co-main happens to be a 40-year-old plus something Arislan De Lara, who's older than Vicious Victor Ortiz. He's older. He's the current WBC, 160-pound champion, or I'm not sure if WBC, but he's the current champion at middleweight.
WBA.
And Danny Garcia is not that much younger. He's practically the same age as Vicious Victor Ortiz, but he's found himself into a title opportunity, moving up 2 weight classes, and a 2-year layoff. And that's the co-main of the Canelo event. So, I don't fault Vicious Victor Ortiz for thinking he still has a shot at something. If anything, it'd be in that middleweight division. But I know you didn't want to discuss this fight much longer. It was an exhibition. It was the only thing on the table aside from Friday, the Niners game I watched, Drew. But this guy, Picasso from Mexico City, at 122 pounds, Alan Picasso, took on Hovhasnisyan. I forget how to say his name, but this guy used to be actually a legit contender, Drew, and a very, very solid opponent. And at 37 years old, I think they said he was 37 years old. Azat, Crazy A, give him a hell of a fucking fight. Excuse my language. I think this is a title eliminator for the WBC. And at super bantamweight, I mean, this puts him pretty close to an opportunity, I suppose, against Naoya Inoue at some point. Or against the number 1 contender. But you got to keep you guys got to keep your eyes on it. This fight was exciting. The scorecards didn't represent that. In fact, I'm reading one of these scorecards was 10 rounds or 12 rounds to nothing. in favor of Picasso, and it wasn't like that. Did you catch this fight?
Nah, not really. I only caught the Ortiz fight and the Mayweather fight.
Yeah, Wiley Coyote says Carmel Moten's opponent was a bum too. Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up because obviously now that Gervonta Tank Davis and Floyd they really split ways and kind of with some, a little bit of tension between those two, obviously with Gervonta Tank Davis going his own ways. Carmel Moten, 18 years old. Drew, I saw him with D-Style at MGM Grand. He walked right by us. I think his dad had like a puppy. More people were interested in his puppy than they were in asking Carmel Moten anything. I could have asked Carmel Moten some stuff and it just slipped by me. I was looking at this puppy. It was like a Pomeranian. It was cute as hell. But apparently Carmel Moten's social media is blowing up already, whether or not that's the TMT effect. He's only 18 and people were saying that he's most likely to be Floyd Mayweather's next great champion. I think he's very skilled, but damn, he's 18 years old and he's really fighting some old journeymen, as Wile E. Coyote pointed out right now. You see anything special that Carmel Moten, they think he's going to be the goods, man?
We have to find out more the more he fights and how fast his development goes and everything. So,
well, they're keeping him busy because I just remember him fighting in Las Vegas against a Mexican American opponent that was actually quite skilled. I think that kid took him the distance. And that kid was undefeated. That was a burgeoning prospect. I think this was a step backwards going to Mexico and fighting some last minute. Yeah, the guy, as Wile Coyote says, the guy just wanted to go eat tacos early. This wasn't going to be any real threat to him, but he found himself on the Floyd Mayweather card nonetheless. And as Drew says, I don't even want to talk about this fight. That was it. That's all we got to talk about this past Saturday night. Which brings us to, we've got some fights this weekend in California at what's formerly known as the Stub Hub in Carson, also known as the War Grounds, open air. Summer's almost over. I'm sure it's going to be a lot cooler than Riyadh season a few weeks back. And everybody knows that the former Stub Hub Center there in Carson is the War Grounds, man. Great fights can break out at any time. And we have a 168-pound contender and Diego Pacheco, who's the former sparring partner, he's a stable mate of David Benavidez. And he's a beast. He's tall, he's lanky, but he did not look that great in his last fight. In fact, I'm going to say Mbili, who we just saw fight, I think Mbili would I got to see something this weekend from Diego Pacheco versus Sulecki, who's been in there against the likes of Demetrius Andrade, some other big names. We need to see something because Mbili looks like he's going to be a really solid contender at 168. He couldn't get rid of Derevchenko, but Drew, that's what we got to look forward to. Before we get to that, let's get to the current state of boxing. Saludos to everybody joining us in the chat. Don't be bashful, man. Where is everybody? I know it's slow. Everybody's taking a break from the sport of boxing as summer's getting over. I got to hear from you, Drew. I was just reading an article about the Saudis, the money, and how potentially the Saudi money might dry up in a year. They're going to put on Dmitry Bivol versus Beterbiev. Lots of great fighters on that card. But what happens if the Saudi money runs out in a year, Drew? They're already saying that they're putting their own projects on hold. They're putting their own projects in Saudi Arabia on hold because of the money he's spending on the sport of boxing. With Canelo asking for $200 million, $150 million, this kind of money is going to could potentially dry up real soon. They're saying this shit could dry up in a year. What about our state of boxing now, and what happens after that?
It's like this. Like, I was reading an article by Three Kings Boxing, shout out to them, and everything about, they really talked about who they blame for not letting Turkey save boxing this year. And the two culprits are Canelo Alvarez and Gervonta Tank Davis. Now, they got the reason, they got the reasons. I understand the reasons why they're blaming them. They didn't want to come fight big fights and everything. And they put the money out there. He put the money out there for them to come fight. And even though I did not like the fight that he wanted for Canelo, I don't understand it. And people want the Benavidez fight. They don't want to see the Terence Crawford fight. So I don't understand that. And Tank, a couple of opponents came to mind, and apparently he didn't want their money. I guess both these guys want to have control of everything. And look at it like this: do I blame them for not being there to try to save boxing and put the popularity back up? Yeah, I do, because they're going to take because they're both have taken cherry picks. Tank's likely going to fight El Rayo, which I said was going to happen, and Canelo with Berlanga. So if we look at it like this, Canelo is in that phase of his career that he's trying to be like Floyd, pick his fights, pick opponents that he knows he'll win against, soft touches and everything, and say the good fighters and their names on his list. But here's the difference with him and Floyd Mayweather. And Dave, I think you're going to have to agree with me on this. Floyd had the names on his resume to fight. The only bad thing was he fought them when they were old, almost on the brink of retirement, or exposed and lost already, and that nobody cared for them. Canelo don't have that luxury. That get names that are out of their prime and everything and fight them now. He just doesn't. He's fighting guys that are barely hitting their prime, guys that are untested, that are going to be untested, and guys that are not really known to the casual boxing fan. And the only ones that are known to the casual boxing fans are the guys like Benavidez, Beaver, which he lost to, but Beterbiev. And if we look at this, it's not gonna work well. It's not. People are gonna resent this idea because Canelo, and the other thing is Canelo lost already. He lost twice already. Floyd hasn't lost. People used to pay money to hopefully Canelo loses. No, to hopefully to watch Floyd lose.
Right.
There's no justifying with Canelo because they saw Canelo lost recently, over a year ago. Though.
Drew, there was a time when I felt like people wanted to see Canelo lose. Like I remember very vividly being in San Jose, California, saying, "Hey, let's plan our next Vegas trip. Let's go see Canelo because I can't wait for him to get exposed." And it didn't happen. I mean, aside from the Floyd Mayweather fight, Canelo kept improving and improving. But I actually used to be one of those people that would, they accused of being a Gennady Golovkin fan and whatnot, like, oh, Mexicans for Triple G. I used to kind of want to see him get exposed. It wasn't only until, like I've said on this channel before, it was only until he beat Kovalev years back and moved up that I really became a fan of Canelo Alvarez of his legacy he was building. Just then, I used to kind of have that approach towards his career. Like, I want to see Canelo lose. Now I want to just see him fight the best fights that he can make before he calls it a wrap.
To Noah's point, the Lomba Tank fight didn't really happen because Tank's people offer him $2.5 million without a rematch clause, and Lou bought him. Why would he take a certain offer like that below his minimum price in his top rank deal and everything? He just did. Oh, I'm just gonna offer him 1.5, and I offer him 2.5, and let and like really, I make $40 million.
Drew, I'm disgusted at the lightweight division, 135.
Yeah.
It seems like Teofimo Lopez had a very easy time unifying and being able to get those matchups. And now we find the 4 champions. We have Tank Stevenson, who's going to be fighting somebody, Cordina, from a weight class below him. In his debut at Matchroom, he left Top Rank. You have Baranchek, who nobody seems to be calling him out, but and you have William Zepeda, who's ranked number 1 across the board by everybody, and he didn't want to fight with Shakur. Even Steve, I'm going to say it right now, he didn't want to fight with Shakur right now. It was him and his party, Oscar, saying, "Let's wait, let's do that maybe next year. Let's start maybe talking about next February or March potentially." And so we have the 135 division kind of in limbo right now, where all the champions aren't going to face each other. And I'd like to see Tank fight somebody good. In fact, I read recently that Tank's not even interested in fighting Ryo, who is a former lightweight.
And the thing about it is, Dave, Shakur wanted 20 million to fight Tank. He priced himself out because Tank, Shakur thinks he's worth all this much, and he's not. And Drew is a fangirl now. Nerd, why do you call yourself nerd? Because you're a nerd or something?
Okay.
You didn't get laid on Prime Night. All you did was probably got put into a trash can on Prime Night or something. That's why you call yourself nerd.
Nerd is trying to just see if he could get a rise out of you, Drew.
Yeah, nerd.
Like last
nerd
week,
wants to get a rise because he's still a virgin. So there he goes.
I just put up a picture.
Get aroused.
I totally forgot, Drew. I don't know if you remember this fighter, Tomoki Kamita. Tomoki Kamita is a Japanese fighter. He fought this weekend in a rematch. Tomoki Kamita was kind of brought upon us about 5 years back by PBC. This guy basically lived his whole teenage years in Mexico, from around the age of 12 or 14, I believe, lived in Mexico. Tomiko Kamita, his brothers are fighters too. He's as Mexican as a Japanese guy can get, man. And he moved back to Japan. He hasn't been back to Mexico, but he's got 4 losses on his belt. But he looks so good this weekend. I guess he's now become the mandatory for Angelo Leo of Las Vegas. Tomiko Kamita could very well be coming back to the U.S. Like I said, he's Japanese, but he lived his entire teenage life. He learned to fight in Mexico. That's where he got his training. And it looks like he'll be getting an opportunity potentially as the number 1 mandatory to Angelo Leo at featherweight. Good for Tomiko Kamita, who put on a really, really brilliant display, man. The Japanese Mexican. What's good, Remy? Good to have you guys. Drew, don't pay attention to the chat so much.
I'm not. You know what I mean? You want to know something, Dave?
Yeah.
I shouldn't give somebody attention that has a fucking chicken as his main picture.
Yeah, nerd is a good participant in here, except what he's trying to get a rise out of you. So, like I said, shout out to Remy and everybody joining us.
You can't let a guy that has a chicken as his main picture fucking get a rise out of me.
Exactly. I also wanted to give a shout out to Sarah, if you're still here, SB from Urban AZ Amigos. Appreciate you guys dropping by. So back to the state of boxing, Drew. Lightweight division is kind of a fucked up mess right now.
Tell you the truth, he's gonna move up in weight. Tank's not gonna fight nobody at lightweight. Like I don't like. It's already soon. He tried to think of a reason to say that make it that Loma didn't accept a contract offer and everything, a low bar offer, and try to take control of everything. Then Shakur wants to cloud chase off people's names as usual, and now he's fighting a number 13th ranked title contender,
Joe Cordina,
in the WBC. Let's just put it like this, Dave. The state of boxing is that within the next couple years, boxing could be non-existent in the United States. Like I think boxing in North America has turned into one of those mime shows, those quiet mime shows that are boring as hell, and people just don't care for it no more. I think boxing is so much on a decline that we are waiting for the sport just to put itself out of its misery.
Drew, one of the
And
things I think that's happening is, I used to talk about Thompson Boxing a lot. Thompson Boxing from Southern California, a great club circuit, the club promoter puts on local club shows in Southern California, and a lot of their fighters had gone on to great things, even becoming world champions or world title contenders. Drew, the club circuit is shrinking all across the U.S., and what's being left is basically a mechanism where fighters that haven't been picked up by the likes of PBC, Top Rank, Golden Boy, basically have to sell their own tickets using social media. So you got a bunch of fighters that aren't good enough or haven't gotten the attention of major promoters, and they're being forced to become social media stars or local stars in their small little market, sell their own fucking tickets, have to sell a lot of, basically put people in the seats, or not get paid. And so what you're getting at the local club level are a bunch of guys that could be good. They haven't gotten picked up, but they're going to fight people that they're absolutely going to smoke. They're going to fight, basically part-time with, the cab. We love to say the word cab drivers, but they're going to fight guys that, don't ever have a chance of being in the ring with professionals. So basically it's all A-side fighters fighting complete trash. Shout out to Santel Media. Yeah, he says Josito Lopez came out of Thompson. Yeah, of course he did. And they've got great guys have come out of that club scene. But the club scene across the U.S., Northern California, I know too, is suffering bad. And it's very hard for some of those fighters to emerge out of them. Thank God we have Pro Box that's still looking for these guys, man, because otherwise it becomes increasingly hard for these guys to emerge. If they don't get picked up by, Top Rank early, it's a hot mess.
like, I don't know. I look at it to like, what are we gonna do? What is boxing preparing to do? And to tell you the truth, you gotta feel bad for the guys that are up and coming and everything, guys that are trying to build their careers and everything, and like guys that are trying to be champions but are trying to make that big money fight and everything. But if we look at it like this, I believe the two people that are going to that are going to put the final nail in boxing's coffin are Gervonta Tank Davis and Canelo Alvarez. And make that three. Floyd. Because Floyd puts these exhibitions on and makes jokes out the sport still. He makes a joke out of the sport doing these exhibitions. He doesn't really take the sport of boxing seriously anymore because he figures I can make like 10 or 15 million bucks beating up YouTube guys, and then that's it, because I know they can't hurt me, because certainly he's not a shape 47-year-old guy. He doesn't have to train all that much for these guys. But like, you would think that Canelo will want to fight the bigger fights and not be like Floyd, and put the sport in good hands when he retires. But Canelo is just putting the final nail in it with fighting these fights and not giving the boxing fans what they want and everything, that pay to watch his fights, that pay for their tickets to watch him fight and everything. Saying, I can do what I want because I earned it. Here's the thing. You technically became the first super middleweight champion of Mexican descent. You're the first super middleweight champion in history. But the thing about it is, when you don't really have that luxury of dance partners that Floyd did to get away with what Floyd did, you can't do that. You have to be forced to fight the tough fights to make your brand still steady. when you did, you lost to Demetrius Beaver. You lost a one-sided fight to him. And then you went back to, all right, everybody thought that you were just going to, this is your comeback fight. This is your mandatory. You fought John Ryder and everything. You dominated the fight. Yeah, you should have got him out of there, But I looked at, and then you went to Jaime Munguia. Hey, good Mexican fight and everything. It was you exposed Jaime Munguia and everything. And then you went to Edwin Berlanga and everything. A joke. A dude that doesn't deserve the fight. Dude that hasn't fought anybody. And except for fighting Benavidez, where you would have made a lot more money and everything. You would have got the pay-per-view buys, and you probably would have got yourself another deal. You chose to fight Berlanga on your last contract to PBC, not knowing what your future is, because I don't think PBC can resign you again, because you're actually going to lose them a lot more money on this fight. And Amazon might put a plug on the PBC relationship. But I think this really points out to the fact that the only one that will be able to touch you when it comes to price demand is the Saudis. And you insulted them. You said you do business my way or we don't do business at all. Who else are you going to do business with? What platform is going to do your own solo promotions? Because let's look at it like this. Canelo needs a big time promoter, because he can't do Canelo Promotions presents this. No, you need another big time promoter with that. And the thing about it is, he's burning his bridges with potential partners. Because remember, when DAZN first came about, they gave Canelo that, what is it, $300 million contract for 8 fights, $30 million a fight. And they said to Oscar, he has to fight Triple G again at one of his fights. Canelo said, no, I'm going to pick my fights. And then they're like this. They gave them the fight that they were going to do. And DAZN said, hey, you want that fight? Fine. But we're not paying you $30 million for that fight. That's not part of the deal. We pick your fights. So we'll pay you $10 to $15 million. And then I'm going to sue you. And he wound up getting shit from DAZN. He wound up having to sue Golden Boy because apparently Oscar didn't tell him some shit or something. That's what broke the relationship up. But at the end of the day, he thought he was going to get away with fighting soft touches and everything for $30 million. And now, let's look at it like this. In the last 10 to 15, maybe 20 years, Dave, how many fights did $1 million or more? Pay-per-view, guys.
That's a good question. In the past 20 years, I'm going to say less than 5, maybe.
I'm going to tell you right now. 1. And
Just
that
one.
was Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Tank Davis. A fight card that does not have Canelo Alvarez on it. And if we look at it, Canelo in the last 15 to 20 years, Canelo's biggest, in the last 15, 20 years, Canelo has had the highest is 800,000. And that is Killer Plant. So if we look at this, and now and then we see that this fight is $89.99, $90. We looked and do the math a little bit. This fight's got to do at least a $25 million gate and 900,000 pay-per-view buys to break even. But PBC cannot afford to break even. They need to make money on this. And there's no way in hell they're going to make money. They're going to lose a hell of a lot of money. But as long as Canelo gets paid, that's all that matters. So Berlanga gets paid. Berlanga might have to wait on his money a while because they're going to pay Canelo first. But let's look at it like this. The state of boxing, as it is right now, there is no state of boxing. Because fights that we want to see are not happening. And I believe promoters are mismanaging their fights, their events, a big deal, and not doing the research, just like the Riyadh season one in LA, the Terence Crawford card. I think that was poorly planned out, and they did not do their research on the community of that area, of how much is the average personally salary to get people to come out, even casuals, to watch this fight. And I believe that is part of the reason why it suffered. It did not sell out. Even when they were offering tickets out, it did not sell out. And they did not really promote this battle with just having Eminem on it and everything, not doing anything else to avoid having 75 to 100,000 pay-per-view buys. Is boxing, the American fight fan is no longer interested in professional boxing like it was 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay.
Because 10 or 15 years ago.
10, 15 years ago, we had HBO, we had Showtime putting on fights. We even still had occasionally CBS putting on fights on weekends.
NBC. And now we would have got the fights that we wanted. We had a lot more fights that we wanted to see. And people knew a lot more fighters back in the day. And people are like this. Back in the day, they was like, hey, that guy's going to get raw known. He's going to be a champion. And when he became a champion, say, hey, I predicted that. So let's look at it like this. No, it's not doing over 1 million buys. Not in America, it's not. Probably not overseas, it's not.
Yeah, I responded to that comment. There's some great comments. Drew, let's take a quick second to address some of these. By the way, shout out to Love My Kids, whoever you are. She, or with the emoji being a female here, had pointed out that she asked Verizon for a refund on the Floyd Mayweather Gotti at $49.99, and they were successful. Now, I don't know if that's even true, but Drew, this week, somebody on Twitter posed a great question. With piracy, with fire sticks, with the ability to stream shit illegally, what price is the most reasonable price for you to say that you wouldn't rip it off? And so I went ahead without even reading the comments. I dropped my price and I thought, shit, that is really low, but this is the God honest truth. Okay. I really would only pay $19.99. I don't give a fuck to pay $1 more than that. Maybe $24.99 if you offered it in high definition 4K. $19.99 being on the lower end for standard high def for 720, 1080p, whatever. And that's it. That's it, because with the ability to watch highlights, replays, read, and of course using devices like Fire Sticks and whatnot, why would anybody want to pay $89.99 for a fight that you already know their predetermined outcome of Canelo versus what's his face, Berlanga? Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to be cheap or say I'm trying to rip off, but people were going to rip off the fights anyways. So why not at least try to get the $19.99? If you got 1 million people paying $19.99, that's a whole lot better than selling 300,000 views or 200,000 at $80. I mean, in my opinion.
You know what, Dave? I consider that they're ripping us off. Canelo is ripping us off for the bullshit fight that he wants, and expects us to pay for it, that price.
Yeah,
But
and
here's
then,
the
yeah,
thing. And here's
yeah.
the
I mean,
fucked
kind
up
of.
part.
I agree with you.
And here's the fucked up. And what was more fucked up? That back then, how do I say this? Today's world, the boxing fan is a sucker and are a bunch of low IQ motherfuckers. I'm sorry, but it's fucking true. Because there are a lot of dumb motherfuckers that will pay $90 for that shit. And they can say what they want. It's fucking true. It's a shame because the fan is responsible for most of this shit too. And it's a shame that you guys don't demand shit. But you want to oh, Canelo can do what he wants. Canelo can do what I don't give a flying fuck if Canelo can do what the fuck he wants. If you care about the sport of boxing, you fucking say you demand he fight somebody.
Hey, Drew, there's a lot of people that want to shame and guilt boxing fans that refuse to pay and pony up the $89.99 for a pay-per-view, for any pay-per-view.
Themselves too.
And the argument that I often hear is, man, you're ripping off the fighter. You're ripping off your favorite fighter. But when I read statements from Devin Haney saying, hey, Oscar, you still haven't fucking paid me my pay-per-view money for the fight against Ryan Garcia, which took place months back. And we've heard these allegations from Canelo Alvarez. We've heard the allegations and lawsuits and seen them from Gennady Golovkin about not being paid your pay-per-view revenue. You're not really ripping off the fighter if all the fighters and big stars are telling you, yo, I've never even really fully been compensated for the pay-per-view portion, not the guaranteed purse, but the amount of money that I'm supposed to make from the pay-per-view revenue. So you're not really ripping them off. In fact, you're just lining the pockets of greedy promoters. I hate to say it. If they're not paying, if Gennady Golovkin had to go to court against Oscar De La Hoya, you're not ripping off Gennady Golovkin. I mean, if you listen to Canelo says, hey, it was Oscar that was ripping me off. And he was ripping off Gennady Golovkin and other fighters, including, like I just mentioned, Devin Haney. And not to just throw shade on Oscar, but this is one example to fight the narrative that fans that steal, that are fans that use Fire Sticks or watch streams illegally, or maybe go to like somebody's house who's showing it, whatever, that you're stealing from the fighter. I just don't buy that argument. I'm sorry.
I don't buy it at all, Dave. It's the fighter. The fighters are stealing. The big time fighters are stealing from the fan when you expect them to pay that large portion of money to see you fight a fucking bum that had no business in that ring and everything. You're stealing, you're scamming people out their money. Canelo Alvarez is scamming the boxing fan out of $90 for this fight with Berlanga.
Yeah. And it goes back to like what we were talking about earlier at club fights. I know Central Media was mentioned Mr. Thompson of Thompson Boxings had passed away. And I believe somebody purchased it, CBN Promotions or something like that. They're doing shows in Long Beach. But they took something that was free to the public, watching Thompson Boxing on YouTube on Friday nights. And now it's on some random, obscure, tiny cable network that nobody's got that channel, if that. I don't even know if it's on that, or you have to pay for it. So now I can't even watch those guys in club fights develop. So it's just part of the bigger problem, Drew. And like you said, even on pay-per-views, we're getting mismatches. With a very expensive pay-per-view, $89.99, you're getting fights where you almost for certain see the predetermined outcome. And no better example of that is this future fight, the fight with Beterbiev and Bivol, where you can go up and down the entire card, Drew, and I'm going to post it up right now, that entire card. And you could pretty much do a parlay for the whole thing, and you might just win that whole parlay because it's so easy to predict who's going to win aside from, the main events.
Yeah.
Look at that card, the Riyadh season card, and tell me that's not all A-side fights. Here it is, Drew. Shakur Stevenson versus Joe Cordina.
Yeah, it is.
Give me a break. Chris Eubank versus Cesar Mata. Maybe that's a toss-up.
Give me a break.
Fabio Wardley and what's his name here? Clark. That's a hell of a match because the first one was great. But then the rest of them are pretty much all A-side fights, Jai Opetaia certainly to win, Ben Whitaker certain to win, Sky Nicholson certain to win, and the very last fight, well, I actually don't know those two, but yeah, that's a problem with even pay-per-view cards, man. Is they're basically becoming showcase fights in many ways.
It has the other thing when you got and boxers don't make account of themselves half the time on social media or other things. They just don't make account of themselves. They have this persona, and then it turns out to be some fake ass shit when they're called out on it and everything. When people call their bluff and everything, man, it's just like boxers back in the day, man. Like during the Super 6 days, the Hopkins, De La Hoyas, and all that shit, man. Like that was my boxing. That was my era. I loved that era. Every time I would go sit down and go over and watch boxing on HBO, Showtime, Dave. Sit there and watch the whole card and know everybody on the card and enjoy the night because they all weren't mismatches. They were all entertaining fights and everything. And you'd be like this, and yo, that kid's gonna be a champion one day, and everything. And it makes you feel a lot better when that kid becomes a champion. Like when Kelly I saw a fight. Kelly Pavlik versus Edison Miranda. The winner was going to move on and potentially get a title shot at Jermaine Taylor, while the loser would take a step back. And Edison Miranda was a heavy favorite in that fight because Edison Miranda was that guy that they thought was going to be world champion, El Pantera, and everything. Kelly Pavlik knocked him out and dominated him and knocked him out. And Kelly Pavlik went on to fight Jermaine Taylor and become unified middleweight champion. And he became that great. He became a household name until he fought Bernard Hopkins. And Hopkins dominated him, gave him a clinic and everything, and then almost getting stopped by Sergio Malavia Martinez. But my favorite boxers, all-time favorite boxers, came from that era.
Yeah, that was a good era.
My two of my all-time favorite fighters were Bernard Hopkins and Rinky Wright. They were two of my all-time favorite fighters and everything. Why? Because they were very good strategists, chess players when it came to boxing, great defensive fighters and everything, but they can make you pay.
Mm-hmm. Winky Wright, the king of the high guard,
and everything, and to me, two Hall of Fame fighters. Now, another one of my favorites, Andre Ward. I was an Andre Ward fan. He reminded me of a young Bernard Hopkins, and everything. Andre Ward was Bernard Hopkins, Winky Wright, and one fighter. That's who I think of Andre Ward as. And then Sergio Martinez, one of my other favorite fighters. Flashy, flamboyant, guy that started boxing late in his 20s and was a bike rider, a cyclist.
Yeah,
in Madrid,
and soccer.
Spain.
And soccer player, too.
And soccer and everything. And he became a multi-division world champion and everything. And then we looked at like all these names that are coming up in that time and everything, like the Super 6. One, my opinion, the thing that got me glued to that seat for over 2.5 years, the Super 6 tournament. Even though people kept dropping out because of injury and everything or getting knocked out real bad, you still seen guys in that tournament that you known that made it more, that had star power in it. Even though they replaced somebody late, they were there.
Yeah, Drew, you remember clearly the Canadian fighter Lucien Boutte wanted nothing to do with the Super 6.
He didn't want to.
Hey,
he was a champion.
He was later exposed as not really, as obviously he was the weakest of all champions. And from that group, Andre Ward solidified himself as a Hall of Famer to wipe everybody out.
It's crazy. You know what's crazy, Dave? I used to love watching Lucien Boutte fight.
Yeah,
I
no, he
used
was
to,
flashy. He was good, but I
yeah,
think
we used to tease him by his name. We used to say Lucian Bute and
yeah.
everything. But like, we would sit there and fight. I remember when he fought Edison Miranda, and I was like, I gotta run to the pizza shop real quick. I'm really fucking hungry. They're getting ready to close for some reason. Now I come back, it's the fourth round. They're like, yo, it's over. I'm like, what? He locked Miranda out. I was like, you fucking kidding me? But like, he was the only champion they didn't want no part of that tournament because they would have been an undisputed super middleweight champion if he would have, he would have fought in it.
Do you think he
And
would have won?
I don't think he would have
No,
won.
no, no. I didn't think so either.
I thought I picked Andre Ward to win.
Okay, right.
I actually won money on that because I picked Andre Ward. I had money on Andre Ward to do it, and then I was also thinking about putting a bet on Kessler because I thought Andre Ward and Michael Kessler was going to win that tournament.
Yeah, Kessler was a great European fighter. Drew, it's interesting because right now we've got Christian and Billy, and they all kind of hail from the same region in Canada. And some of these guys, like Lucian Bute, was such a big star in his local market that he was like, the risk reward wasn't there for him to give up his title, to give up his belt, put it on the line. He's like, I'm just going to stay in my local market. And Christian and Billy strikes me as a guy, obviously he wants to do big things, but he could become such a big star fighting, nobodies in the 168 division and keep a name, but he doesn't have the belt. Things are screwed up right now. He needs a title.
The thing about Billy is, like I said numerous times, he's John Pascal with a gas tank. That's what I think of Christian and Billy.
Well, this weekend,
he fights the same way as John Pascal. He even has the same trainer as John Pascal did.
This weekend, like I mentioned earlier, Diego Pacheco is set to take the stage, headlining at only the age of 23. But before we get to our final subject of the day, Drew, I talked briefly the other day, Philadelphia's fighters, Jerome Boots Ennis, apparently was going back and forth with Brian Norman and his dad and their team. And actually, supposedly, a lot of offers, including Emiliano Stanionis, came out on social media and said that the offer was in rubies or some rupees, and it was chump change. And everybody's kind of saying that they did get an offer, but that the offers were so bad that it was chump change, and that's why they weren't taken seriously. But because of that, the IBF kind of stepped in, and this is what I say is fucking wrong with the sport of boxing right now. The IBF sanctioning body was like, hey, you know what, Boots Ennis, you got to fight your mandatory. But the mandatory is a guy he's already whooped on named Karen. And finally, over the weekend, I guess some stuff has changed. And the Brian Norman situation, he's just been elevated to champion. It looks like the negotiations are ongoing and headed in the right direction. And Brian Norman even willing to fight in Boots' backyard in your hometown of Philadelphia. I'm happy to see this shit. I'm happy to see it.
I think people need to look at it like this. Who I talk to, Brian's not getting no more than $500K in this fight. That's the most he's potentially getting offered. Like, Top Rank wants him to fight Teofimo. That's the fight that they want to make. They try to pitch it that, hey, you're going to make more money fighting Teofimo. And apparently nobody at Top Rank thinks he can beat Teofimo. But I think he can. I think he beats Teofimo Lopez because I think in order for Teofimo to move up in weight and be successful as a welterweight,
you got to carry power.
He has to become a way better boxer because the power's not coming up there with him, Dave.
Nah, it didn't. It's barely been demonstrated at 140. I hate to say it, Teofimo, a young fighter I like a lot. But he's let me down. He's not very consistent. At times, he lets you down. When you need to see him put on a show, and he just doesn't do it at times. But Drew, for him to move up to welterweight after what Brian Norman displayed and did against Santillan, a very durable and tough and has power as welterweight. What he did to Santillan, the beatdown he put on him, for Teofimo to think in his head that he's ready for Terrence Bud Crawford, or even just for Brian Norman, have you not watched the tape, dog? Have you not watched the tape on Brian Norman?
The only problem with Brian Norman is he's open for a counter shot. If you put him up against a good counter shot puncher, that could be problems for him.
I think Boca Chico, Puerto Rican kid named Boca Chico, who dropped Norman, The only person who dropped him, has been dropped before. Boca Chico's a guy that apparently the sparring tapes are out there. Boca Chico sparred Teofimo Lopez and dropped him as well. Boca Chico can crack.
Yeah.
This is a guy that is relatively unknown. He was on Showbox, but apparently he's even hurt Teofimo. So I don't know. Brian Norman can definitely take a punch. He's been dropped, but he's gotten off the canvas, and he's
It would be a good fight.
a current champion.
Like here's the thing. I'm glad it's in the right direction, that they all kind of opened back negotiations up and everything. But I will hope that Brian Norman's people know he's not getting the reward for fighting Boots Denny, because he's not well known and everything. And you're at the mercy of the A side on this one. Like it or not, you're at the mercy of the A side.
Well, as much as I'd like to say I want to see this fight, for Brian Norman's sake, I hope he gets $1 million, man. I mean, he's a young kid. To give up your title, if he loses his title, he should be at least worth $1 million, and you are going to his backyard. But Drew, you're right. I mean, just 2 fights ago, he was probably barely cracking the $100,000-$250,000 range, and now to jump to the $1 million, he does have a title. I think it's kind of justified.
I think he'll probably get a lot better money if maybe Top Rank gets some fights first, or maybe if he pulls off the Teofimo win and everything, to make him a household name. And if he beats Teofimo like with ease, or really beats the balls off of him and everything, I think it makes him that $1 million. I think
definitely
$800 to $1 million payday. And anything, I think it's best for them. Take the Teofimo fight. I think he wins that fight. Top Rank doesn't think so, but I think he does. And
revisit the unification later.
Unification, maybe unify with Stanionis or Barrios if you want to try to get more leverage, because I think he beats the balls off of Mario Barrios, Brian Norman. Stanionis is a toss-up. Like, Boots, I think Boots beats him. It'll be an entertaining fight, but I think Boots is an excellent counterpuncher to be able to counter Norman, because Norman is that Wolfhouse type of fighter.
For
think that if we look at it, Norman could be open to a counter shot. And I think that he may get hit with one. But I think that Norman could be between 2 and 3 in welterweight.
Yeah.
So,
well, I certainly hope. Drew, you made a good point. I mean, the Teofimo fight would make him a lot of money and would bring a lot of eyes to him. Not too many people know about the Santillan beatdown he put down, and that he earned the WBO belt, as some people would say, via email, as he was elevated to full champion status. Nonetheless, I got to see these welterweights unify. Somebody has to emerge. Most people think it's going to be Boots Ennis to emerge as the undisputed champ. If they can make these fights happen, like you said, Mario Barrios, he doesn't have a dance partner. He hopes it's Pacquiao, 46-year-old Pacquiao, because the money's right. He's already had a taste of that big fight money with Gervonta Tank Davis. He's talking about, I'll fight Pacquiao. That sounds good to me. How much money's on that one?
I look at it, man. I think it would be a bad look for Mario Barrios to fight a 46-year-old guy that actually hasn't really boxed really in about 4 or 5 years and everything. And to look at it like this, I just don't think it's right for his career to do that, and to be known as someone to be the 46-year-old inactive retired guy. He got retirement and everything. I think that if we look at it, the weakest champion in that division is Mario Barrios. And everything, he didn't really look good at all in his last fight. He took a lot of shots, even though they said he clearly won the fight, but he took a lot of shots. Dude, he had a scratch on him that he fought.
Yeah, that was Maidana's baby brother, too.
Yeah, so I look at it like this. People tell me, why don't Boots move up? Well, the thing about it is, why do people against him trying to make a legacy at a weight class, and then have this could be an actual faster path to potentially getting a Terrence Crawford fight at 154, if he was to get unified at welterweight, he says, "Hey, I need to move up and I move up," but he'll get one of those belts sanctioned buys to make him Terrence mandatory, and he's automatically gets the Terrence Crawford fight. And that's what I brought that point up to them, and they're like, "Yeah, well, you can just move up and fight." I'm like, but here's the thing: you can have someone, oh, that's his resume. He became unified welterweight champion, undisputed welterweight champion, and everything. And then after that, after all that, you just say, "All right, I'm going to move up. I'm going to move up in weight, and I'm going to exercise my right to be mandatory." And that's what he does, Hopefully he gets what he wants out of it and everything, and that's it,
I hope so too, Drew. That's the current state of boxing for now. We're coming upon the full hour. Guys, usually we have a lot more people. I know it's a slow week. The numbers are kind of down, but please, if you're in the chat right now, don't feel shy. Make sure you hit that like button. I do have something very important to say before we move on to the final fight, and that's the fact that make sure you check out my channel tomorrow because I spent all weekend editing a video. I have a brand new video vlog that has nothing to do with boxing, but I've been practicing my filmmaker stuff, so please check out my vlog tomorrow, Taco Tuesday. It's going to premiere, I think, at 5 o'clock. All right, Drew, this weekend we have, like I mentioned, in Southern California, former StubHub, the War Grounds in Carson, California. 23-year-old Diego Pacheco, 6'4". You would think he was going to run over everybody, but in his last fight, he kind of looked beatable. He's fighting Sulecki, a Polish fighter who's been in with some great opponents. He has losses against, I mentioned, Demetrius Bubu Andrade. He has a loss against Danny Jacobs. He had a promising career, but now he finds himself in his late 30s. Excuse me, that's not the right picture here. But Diego Pacheco needs to impress, Drew, because he seems to think that a fight, and so does Eddie Hearn, his promoter, who's been successful in getting Canelo to fight Berlanga. He seems to think Diego Pacheco's on the next list. But he's, to me, well, if he doesn't win in impressive fashion, he's way behind Christian and Billy, Drew. So let's talk about this fight real quick. It's the main event. The only one worthwhile, in my opinion, about talking about is what in the world.
Second, Dave, I gotta use the bathroom.
Oh, shit. Okay, well, let me bring up the graphic, and I'll freestyle for a minute here, guys. Drew's going to take a quick potty break. So let me just quickly go over this. We also have Nunez versus Mariaga on the card this Saturday at Dignity Health Sports Park Center. Diego Pacheco coming in at 21-0 with 17 KOs against Sulecki, who's 32-2 with 12 KOs. As I mentioned before, Sulecki's a name to a lot of people who've been watching for boxing for a while. Know that he's a tough fighter, but he's 35 years old, and he's kind of been fighting subpar opponent. He just recently fought a guy named Rowdy Legend Montgomery, who was 11-6-1. So that's not saying much of anything here. Let me put up their picture here. This is going to be the fight card, as I just mentioned. I'll put it down here below here where Drew is as we wait. We wait for Drew to come back. It's on DAZN this weekend, Saturday. And like I was mentioning, guys, Diego Pacheco, for a super middleweight, 6'4", he has all the natural gifts. He's been fighting guys much, much bigger than him his entire life. He's been fighting since he was a little boy. And the time now is to listen. He finds himself like this guy, Hamza Shiraz, at middleweight. They're freaks of nature as far as height, 6'4". This guy could easily find himself into a cruiserweight, or someday be a heavyweight in his mid-30s, I suppose. But right now at 168, he's not mowing down people anymore. Now that he's gotten to the top level of competition at 168, you see some holes in the game. And if you're vying for a fight against Canelo Alvarez, well, I guess you just barely have to be as good as Berlanga, who's undefeated. But you got to show something. You got to, like Jaime Munguia did, you got to show that you're worthy where you have a chance. And Diego Pacheco being 6'4", you would think, obviously, man, that for Canelo Alvarez, why on earth would you want to fight a guy who could be playing tight end on an NFL team or playing basketball with all those gifts that he has in reach advantage and height? Diego Pacheco's got to do that. Good friend of our show, Gail Falkenthal over at nyfights.com, interviewed him this past weekend. I don't have the interview in front of me, but you guys can check out that interview at nyfights.com. He's talking about the time is now. He's been living in Seattle with David Benavidez, his camp. He's been his primary sparring partner. They think he's had over 1,000 hours of sparring David Benavidez, who is the former WBC super middleweight champ. So you would think naturally should be the second best guy in the entire division. But with the likes of Christian and Billy developing into a Quebec, Montreal star, somebody who's proving himself to be on the world level, with Jaime Munguia out there, people like Caleb Plant, former world champion, there's a lot of guys that Diego Pacheco probably needs to beat. He needs to beat one or two of those guys, in my opinion, because beating the Polish fighter Sulecki, who many people probably consider washed up at this point, is probably not going to be enough for him and Eddie Hearn at Matchroom to convince Canelo Alvarez that he should be next in line, especially if Christian and Billy quickly gets ranked as a mandatory for Canelo Alvarez. You guys know Canelo Alvarez just recently lost his IBF title. The IBF stripped him of that. Is going to be mandating William Skull, who was his mandatory to fight for the vacant belt. Any of these people here should be looking at that vacated IBF belt, and the winner of that should William Skull be successful, Drew. I'm saying Diego Pacheco, he really hasn't beat anybody worthy enough to say, look at me, Canelo, I'm next in line. I should be next in line. But a win over somebody like Jaime Munguia, Christian and Billy, Caleb Plant certainly starts putting him in the right direction, Drew, as the next contender to get a shot at Canelo. What about you? What do you say?
I look at it as in, like, I really think Canelo needs to move up after this fight. I really think that you're holding this division up hostage and everything. I think you just need to get the belts up, let these young guys fight for the belts, move up and everything. Like, we all know none of these guys in 168 beat Canelo Alvarez. It's that
none of them
conclusion that it does not happen.
Gee, you're probably right about that, and that's the current, like I said, that's the current state of boxing. Canelo Alvarez, the face of boxing, one of the biggest stars, obviously, if not the biggest star internationally, finds himself with he weakened the 168 division by playing his cards right. He forced guys like David Benavidez and David Morrell, two of his biggest threats, to say, man, I'm moving up in weight. And the irony is that all of a sudden Canelo seems to be very interested in fighting the potential winner of Dmitry Bivol versus Beterbiev at 175. Could we be seeing the final fight of Canelo Alvarez's career? Maybe in the next year.
I would think it has to be, because there's not really a lot more he can really do.
He moves up to 175. He says, screw fighting Billy, screw fighting Pacheco, screw fighting all these young guys moving up that I'm going to beat. Come on, guys. I'm going to beat them. I'm going to go for the champion at 175. And if it's Dmitry Bivol again, so be it. I'll fight him one more time at 175. And this time I promise to beat him. Do you end your career right there with a loss or a win to Dmitry Bivol? Do you call it?
I tell you the truth. I think that regardless, I think his career is over. Because I think that he loses to Demetrius Bivol again. I do not think he will ever beat Demetrius Bivol, because Demetrius Bivol is that good of a boxer and is that more powerful than Canelo Alvarez to beat him easily.
If he wants to fight, and it didn't happen the original time they went for the negotiations for the rematch, if he wants it, I'm all for it. At that point, he loses again. True shit. I don't know how you write the final chapter of the Canelo book. I don't know. Of one last victory lap in Mexico, who knows? But if he's serious about it, boy, David Benavidez gets screwed over again, because David Benavidez is supposed to be the mandatory.
And Canelo is quickly going down the pound for pound list.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody joining us. Drew Evo and I are going to be back. Like I said, I got a special vlog, something tomorrow. We're going to take a look at the landscape as we approach the end of the summer. We got a big holiday weekend coming up ahead. We got football season right on. A lot to talk about as football season approaches. And Drew, any final thoughts before we wrap it up tonight?
Not off the top of my head.
All right, guys, man. It's been a pleasure. Shoeshine Boxing, Drew Evo in Philadelphia. We're out. We'll check you guys out later. Peace.